Hi everyone, I'm Curtis, 28 years old. Today I want to share the story of my most memorable wedding day. Not because of happiness, but because of how I flipped an entire perfect family upside down with just one piece of paper. Imagine standing in your wedding dress while your father announces to 500 guests that you're not his real daughter and he's cutting you off from your inheritance. The humiliation was supposed to destroy me. Instead, it became the moment I'd been preparing for my entire life. You see, while my adoptive father, Ethan Richardson, was publicly disowning me, I had something in my clutch purse that would shatter his perfect world. DNA test results proving his beloved son, his heir, wasn't actually his. The boy he'd raised for 24 years, the one he called real family while rejecting me, he was his brother's child. What happened next turned Boston's high society upside down and taught everyone in that ballroom a lesson about blood, loyalty, and what really makes a family. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. The Richardson name carries weight in Boston. My adoptive father, Ethan, built Richardson Holdings from a small construction firm into a $500 million real estate empire over 30 years. Every business magazine in New England has featured his face at least once, the self-made man who conquered Boston's skyline. My mother, Caitlin, wasn't just his wife, she was his original business partner. Her family's connections opened doors Ethan could never have accessed alone. When she died of cancer when I was 13, she left behind more than just memories. She owned 15% of Richardson Holdings, worth about $75 million today. 6 months after Mom's funeral, Ethan married Michelle, a former Miss Massachusetts turned interior designer. She arrived with perfectly blown hair, a practiced smile, and an immediate mission to erase any trace of my mother from the Richardson estate. The family photos came down first. Then the furniture was replaced. Finally, she brought in her prize, Nathan, her son from a previous marriage who Ethan adopted immediately. From that day forward, the hierarchy was clear. At every family dinner, I sat at the same mahogany table where I'd grown up, but now I felt like a guest in my own home. Nathan got the seat next to Ethan. Michelle controlled the conversation. And I became the charity case they had to tolerate, the adopted daughter who should be grateful for any crumb of attention. "Remember, Curtis," Ethan would say whenever I excelled at something, "you're lucky to have the Richardson name at all. Not everyone gets such opportunities." The worst part? I believed him. For years, I actually believed I should be grateful for being treated like an outsider in the only family I'd ever known. The discrimination wasn't subtle. It was systematic and documented. When Nathan decided he wanted to attend Harvard Business School, Ethan wrote a check for $80,000 without blinking. When I got accepted to MIT's School of Architecture with higher test scores, I was told to take out student loans. "It builds character," Ethan explained, forwarding me loan applications. "Besides, architecture isn't really a Richardson business, is it?" Nathan's 21st birthday? A yacht party for 500 guests that made the society pages. My 21st birthday? A family dinner at home where Michelle forgot to order a cake. These weren't oversights, they were statements. But the email from 3 years ago hurt the most. I just won the Emerging Architect Award from the Boston Society of Architects, the youngest recipient in its history. I forwarded the announcement to Ethan, hoping for once to see pride in his eyes. His response came within minutes. "Congratulations. Don't forget you're not a real Richardson. Managing expectations will serve you better than awards. ER." I printed that email. Actually, I printed every email, every dismissive text, every legal document that reminded me of my place. My mother had taught me that when I was 10, sitting in her home office as she organized contracts. "Paper is proof, sweetheart," she'd said, filing away another folder. "People forget conversations, they rewrite history. But documents? Documents don't lie." I now had 3 filing cabinets full of documents. Little did Ethan know that his own words would become evidence in a case he never saw coming. Sometimes the best revenge isn't planned. It's simply being prepared when opportunity presents itself. The real stakes became clear last month when I turned 28. According to my mother's will, I would receive full control of my $2 million trust fund at 30, but only if Ethan, as executor, didn't find just cause to deny it. The 15% stake in Richardson Holdings was supposed to transfer automatically, but Ethan had been fighting it in probate court for years. Your mother wasn't of sound mind near the end, his lawyers argued, despite her cancer diagnosis coming 2 years after she'd updated her will. Every delay cost me thousands in legal fees I couldn't afford. My architecture firm, Ophelia Design, was bleeding money fighting for contracts that mysteriously went to competitors at the last minute. I needed that inheritance to keep the business alive. 10 employees depended on me, and I was 3 months from bankruptcy. Just sign over your shares to Nathan, Michelle suggested over tea last week, sliding papers across her marble kitchen island. For family harmony. Surely your mother would want the family business to stay with Blood Family. Blood Family. There it was again. That night, I finally opened my mother's safety deposit box at Boston Private Bank. Something she'd told me to do when you're strong enough to handle the truth. Inside, among the bonds and jewelry, was a letter in her handwriting. My darling Curtis, if you're reading this, you're ready. The Richardson family holds secrets that even I couldn't confront while alive. Find Sarah Coleman at GeneTech Labs. She has answers about Project Genesis. Be stronger than I was. Love, Mom. Project Genesis? I'd never heard that name before. But something about the way my hands trembled holding that letter told me everything was about to change. The pressure intensified the week before my wedding. Nathan had just been promoted to VP of Development at Richardson Holdings, despite being only 24 with zero actual experience. Meanwhile, I'd been excluded from the Seaport District project, a $50 million development I'd spent 6 months designing. Why isn't Ms. Ophelia leading this project? Mr. Tanaka from our Tokyo partners asked during the presentation. These are clearly her designs. Curtis has her own little company now, Nathan interrupted, smirking. We wouldn't want to distract her from her smaller projects. The room went silent. Even Ethan looked uncomfortable. But what happened next surprised everyone. With respect, Mr. Tanaka continued, his voice firm. We partnered with Richardson Holdings because of the innovative designs we saw. If Miss Ophelia isn't involved, we may need to reconsider. Nathan's face flushed red. After the meeting, he cornered me by the elevators. You think you're special because some foreign investor likes your drawings? You're nothing but Dad's charity case. Everyone knows it. 20 employees were watching. The receptionist had her phone out. I stayed calm, remembering Marcus's advice about recording everything. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. I could legally record without telling him. I'm sorry you feel that way, Nathan, I replied evenly, my phone recording in my pocket. I hope we can work together professionally despite our personal differences. There is no we, he spat. After your wedding, you're done here. Dad's already planning to contest the will. Michelle knows judges. You'll get nothing. Patricia from HR stepped forward. Mr. Richardson, this conversation is highly inappropriate. But Nathan just laughed. What are you going to do? Report me to my father? What none of them knew was that I'd been preparing for this moment for months. Have you ever had to choose between money and self-respect? I'd love to know in the comments. Would you stay silent to keep the peace, or would you fight for what's rightfully yours? The next part of my story involves a secret that changed everything, one that my mother took to her grave. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss what happens when all the secrets finally come out. 5 days before my wedding, Ethan called a family meeting at the Richardson estate. November 10th, 2024, 7 p.m. sharp. I remember because Michelle had sent a formal invitation like it was a board meeting. The tension in the library was suffocating. Ethan sat behind his massive oak desk, Michelle perched on the arm of his chair like a sentinel. Nathan sprawled in the leather chair across from them, scrolling through his phone with practiced indifference. This wedding is costing $200,000, Ethan started without preamble. Marcus and I are paying $150,000 ourselves, I responded calmly. Michelle laughed, sharp and bitter. With what money? It's still Richardson money, one way or another. Actually, it's from the Harborside Tower project, the one I designed and project managed independently. Because Dad gave you the opportunity, Nathan interjected without looking up. I won that bid myself. The client specifically requested, "Enough!" The voice that cut through our argument wasn't Ethan's. It was Elizabeth Richardson, my grandmother, standing in the doorway. At 78, she still commanded a room like the federal judge she'd once been. "Ethan, you will not diminish this girl's accomplishments," she said, walking slowly to my side. "Curtis has earned every single thing she's achieved." "Mother, you don't understand the full situation." "I understand perfectly." Elizabeth's hand rested on my shoulder. "I understand that you've let your new wife poison this family. I understand that you've forgotten what Caitlin meant to this empire." Michelle's face went white. Nathan finally looked up from his phone. "And Ethan?" He looked like a child caught in a lie. "This discussion is over," Elizabeth declared. "The wedding will proceed as planned." But the look Ethan gave me said this was far from over. 2 days later, Nathan decided to escalate things publicly. It was November 12th, a Tuesday morning at Richardson Holdings headquarters. I'd come in to collect some personal items from my old office when Nathan called an impromptu meeting in the main conference room. 20 employees gathered, confused why the VP of Development needed everyone present. Then Nathan stood up, that practiced smirk plastered across his face. "Before Curtis leaves us for married life, I wanted to thank her publicly," he began, his voice dripping with false sincerity, "for showing us all that charity cases can sometimes surprise you." The room froze. Someone gasped. Janet from accounting dropped her coffee mug. "After all," Nathan continued, "not every orphan gets adopted into success. We should all appreciate the opportunities my father has provided." My phone was already recording in my pocket. Several employees had their phones out too. This was going viral internally within minutes. "Nathan," Patricia from HR stood up, her voice shaking with anger, "this is completely inappropriate. You cannot—" "Can't what? Tell the truth? Everyone here knows Curtis isn't real family. Check the company directory. She's not even listed as a Richardson." That's when I stood up, calm as my mother taught me to be in the face of cruelty. "You're right, Nathan. I'm not listed as a Richardson in the directory because I chose to use my mother's maiden name professionally, Ophelia, out of respect for her memory and her contributions to building this company." The room shifted. Several senior employees who remembered my mother nodded knowingly. "But thank you for this moment," I continued, holding up my phone. "Massachusetts is a one-party consent state. This recording will be very useful." Nathan's smirk finally disappeared. That evening, I returned to Boston Private Bank to thoroughly examine my mother's safety deposit box. Beyond the letter I'd found earlier, there was a USB drive labeled Insurance and a folder marked Project Genesis, 2019. The documents inside made my hands shake. Medical records, financial transfers, and a business card. Dr. Sarah Coleman, Director, Gene Tech Laboratories. My mother's letter explained more. "Curtis, my love, families built on lies always crumble. The Richardson legacy isn't what it seems. In 2019, I discovered something about Nathan that would destroy Ethan's perfect narrative. I had the proof verified but couldn't use it. I was already too sick, too weak. But you, my darling, you're stronger than I ever was. Sarah Coleman has everything. She promised to wait for you. The truth about Project Genesis will set you free, but only if you're brave enough to use it. Remember, documents don't lie, but people do, even the ones who claim to love you." Project Genesis. The name felt heavier now. I called the number on Dr. Coleman's card. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting. "Curtis? I've been expecting your call for 5 years. Your mother said you'd find me when you were ready." "Ready for what?" "To learn the truth about Nathan Richardson's paternity. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Bring the USB drive. And Curtis, Your mother was right. You're going to need all your strength for what comes next. I agreed to meet her at 9 a.m. As I hung up, I noticed my hands weren't shaking anymore. Whatever Project Genesis revealed, I was ready. My mother had made sure of that. Dr. Sarah Coleman's office at Gene Tech Labs was exactly what you'd expect from Boston's premier genetic testing facility. Sterile, professional, and fortified with enough security to protect state secrets. What I didn't expect was the warmth in her eyes when she saw me. "You look just like Caitlin," she said, embracing me like an old aunt. We were roommates at Harvard. She was the only person who stood up for me when I was the only Black woman in our biochemistry program. She led me to a secure conference room and pulled out a file marked Richardson, chain of custody maintained. "Your mother came to me in 2019 with suspicions about Nathan's paternity. She'd noticed things. Nathan's blood type didn't match what Ethan's should be. The timing of his birth. Michelle's mysterious spa retreat 9 months before Nathan was born." Sarah opened the file, revealing lab reports with official stamps and notarizations. December 23, 2019. "Your mother brought me hair samples from the family Christmas party. Nathan's hair from his jacket, Ethan's from his study, and," she paused, "Daniel Richardson's hair from a preserved baseball cap Caitlin had kept." Daniel. Ethan's older brother who died in a car accident in 2002. The results were conclusive. 99.97% probability that Nathan Richardson is the biological son of Daniel Richardson, not Ethan. 0% chance Ethan is the father. The room spun. Michelle had an affair with her brother-in-law? The DNA doesn't lie. Every test was triple verified, chain of custody documented. This would hold up in any court in America. "Why didn't my mother use this?" Sarah's eyes softened. "She was protecting you. She knew that if she revealed this while sick, Ethan would blame you, punish you. She wanted you strong enough to defend yourself first." Can you believe it? The golden child who was supposed to inherit everything wasn't even Ethan's son. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Comment justice if you want to see hypocrites get exposed for who they really are. And please hit that like button if you've been following from the beginning. The wedding confrontation that's coming next? You won't want to miss a single word of it. November 15th, 2024, arrived with perfect New England weather, crisp, clear, and golden. The Four Seasons Boston had transformed their grand ballroom into something from a fairy tale. $50,000 in white orchids cascaded from the ceiling. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across tables set with baccarat glasses and Christoffel silver. By 6 p.m., 500 of Boston's elite had assembled. Mayor Walsh was chatting with Senator Morgan near the bar. 3 Superior Court judges occupied a corner table. The Boston Globe Society reporter was already taking notes. This wasn't just my wedding, it was the social event of the season. Ethan arrived in a $15,000 Tom Ford tuxedo, his Patek Philippe watch catching the light with every handshake. He worked the room like the master networker he was, accepting congratulations for raising such an accomplished daughter. The hypocrisy made my stomach turn, but I smiled and played my part. Michelle floated through the crowd in a $30,000 Harry Winston diamond set that she'd made sure everyone knew was an anniversary gift from my devoted husband. She air-kissed her way through Boston's social registry, each greeting a small performance of gracious wealth. Nathan held court at the bar, regaling Harvard buddies with stories about his rapid rise at Richardson Holdings. Youngest VP in company history, he boasted, conveniently forgetting to mention the nepotism. I stood with Marcus, radiant in my Vera Wang gown, one I'd saved for 3 years to buy myself, refusing Ethan's offer to pay. My clutch, a simple silver piece, felt heavy with its secret cargo. The DNA test results Dr. Coleman had given me, notarized and sealed. "You look beautiful," Marcus whispered, squeezing my hand. "Whatever happens, we face it together." Looking at the assembled crowd, power brokers, socialites, and journalists, I realized this was Ethan's arena. His rules, his reputation. He had no idea he'd already lost. At 8:47 p.m., Just as dessert was being served, Ethan stood up and tapped his champagne glass. The room gradually quieted, 500 faces turning toward the father of the bride. Michelle smiled beside him, her hand possessively on his arm. Nathan raised his glass from table 2, already smirking. "Before we toast the happy couple," Ethan began, his voice carrying across the ballroom, "I need to address something important about my daughter." The word daughter dripped with something dark. Marcus's hand found mine under the table. "You see, Curtis isn't my biological daughter," he continued, letting the words land like bombs in the silent room. "She's adopted. Her mother Caitlin brought her into our family when she was just a baby." Gasps rippled through the crowd, silverware clattered against plates, someone's champagne flute hit the floor and shattered. "And while I've provided for her all these years, the best schools, every opportunity, I think it's time we're honest about what family really means." Senator Morgan shifted uncomfortably. The Boston Globe reporter was typing furiously on her phone. "Blood is blood," Ethan declared, his voice rising. "And Curtis? She's not a real Richardson. Which is why, effective immediately, I'm terminating all financial support. The trust fund Caitlin left? I'll be contesting it as executor. The shares in Richardson Holdings? Not appropriate for a non-family member." Mayor Walsh's mouth fell open. Judge Patterson at table 6 stood up, then sat back down. The Tanaka family from Tokyo looked horrified at this breach of decorum. Michelle was actually smiling. Nathan raised his glass higher, toasting his father's cruelty. "She's not my real daughter anyway," Ethan finished, setting down his glass with finality. The ballroom was tomb silent, except for the sound of my 78-year-old grandmother Elizabeth crying softly at table 1. That's when I stood up. Ethan wasn't finished. He picked up his glass again, apparently energized by the shocked silence of 500 witnesses. "Let me be specific about what this means," he continued, his CEO voice echoing off the ballroom walls. "The $2 million trust fund Caitlin left? As executor, I'm invoking the Just Cause Clause. Curtis won't see a penny." Camera phones were out now, recording everything. The wedding videographer looked at me questioningly. I nodded for him to keep filming. "The 15% stake in Richardson Holdings?" Ethan pulled out his phone, reading from what looked like legal notes. "My lawyers will prove Caitlin wasn't of sound mind when she changed her will. Cancer affects judgment. Any judge will see that." "This is outrageous," someone whispered loudly. It was Mrs. Cabot from the Boston Arts Foundation. As for Ophelia Design, Ethan's eyes found mine across the room, cold and calculating. "Without the Richardson backing, I doubt it'll last another quarter. Banks talk in this town. Contracts dry up. You understand how Boston works." Michelle stood up beside him, diamonds glittering. "We're just being honest, finally. Everyone deserves to know who they're really doing business with." Nathan was recording everything on his phone, grinning like he'd won the lottery. "Truth hurts," he called out, loud enough for everyone to hear. Marcus started to rise, his face flushed with anger, but I placed my hand on his arm. "Not yet." Elizabeth Richardson had stopped crying. She was staring at her son with something between disgust and pity. Mr. Tanaka from our Tokyo partners was whispering urgently to his wife in Japanese. The society reporter from the Globe hadn't stopped typing. "So please," Ethan raised his glass one more time, "join me in toasting the happy couple with full transparency about who they really are." Nobody raised their glass. Nobody except Michelle and Nathan. Perfect. I stood slowly, smoothing my wedding gown with steady hands. The clutch with its precious cargo came with me as I walked to the microphone at the head table. My heels clicked against the marble floor, the only sound in a room holding its collective breath. "Thank you, Ethan," I said, my voice calm and clear through the sound system. "Thank you for that enlightening speech." I looked out at 500 faces, some sympathetic, some scandalized, all captivated. This was Ethan's arena, but he'd just handed me the microphone. "Since we're discussing DNA and bloodlines tonight," I continued, opening my silver clutch with deliberate slowness, "I have something to share as well." Michelle's smile faltered. She grabbed Ethan's arm, whispering urgently. He brushed her off, still confident in his public destruction of me. You see, Ethan's right about one thing. Documents matter, legal papers, medical records. I pulled out the white envelope, Gene Tech Labs logo visible even from a distance, DNA tests. The blood drained from Michelle's face so fast I thought she might faint. Nathan stopped recording, his phone dropping to the table. This is from Gene Tech Laboratories, one of Boston's most respected testing facilities. I held the envelope high. Test date, October 3rd, 2024. Subject, Nathan Richardson. This is ridiculous. Nathan started to stand, but Judge Patterson from Table 6 commanded, Sit down, young man. Let her speak. I locked eyes with Ethan. For the first time in my life, I saw fear there. Alleged father, Ethan Richardson, I continued, my voice growing stronger. Probability of paternity. The room held its breath. Michelle was shaking her head, mouthing, No, no, no. 0%. The silence was deafening. Then someone dropped a plate, the crash echoing like thunder. But don't worry, I said, letting a small smile cross my face. We did find Nathan's biological father, 99.97% probability match. I paused, savoring the moment my mother had orchestrated from beyond the grave. Daniel Richardson, your brother, Ethan, the one who died in 2002. Michelle collapsed into her chair. Nathan's face went from red to white to green. And Ethan? He stood frozen, his $15,000 tuxedo suddenly looking like a costume on a broken mannequin. I unfolded the laboratory report slowly, the official Gene Tech letterhead visible to the front tables. Let me read the exact results, I said, my voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. Laboratory Director, Dr. Sarah Coleman. Sample collection date, October 3rd, 2024. Chain of custody maintained and documented. This is fake, Nathan shouted, but his voice cracked like a teenager's. Dr. Coleman is here tonight. I gestured to table 12, where Sarah stood up, her credentials impeccable in a navy suit. Harvard Medical School, 20 years running Gene Tech Labs. She can verify every detail. Sarah nodded. Every test was run 3 times. The results are conclusive and court-admissible. I continued reading. Comparative DNA analysis between Nathan Richardson and Ethan Richardson. 0% probability of paternal relationship. Comparative analysis between Nathan Richardson and Daniel Richardson, deceased. Samples obtained from preserved personal effects. 99.97% probability of paternal relationship. The sound that came from Ethan's throat wasn't quite human. He turned to Michelle, who was shaking her head frantically, tears destroying her perfect makeup. Daniel? Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone caught it. My brother? You slept with my brother? It was before we were married, Michelle sobbed. You were always traveling, always working. Daniel was there and Daniel died in 2002, I interrupted, my voice cutting through her excuses. Nathan was born in 2001. The timeline is rather inconvenient for your narrative, Michelle. Mr. Tanaka from Tokyo stood up. This is most unexpected. His tone suggested he was reconsidering every Richardson Holdings contract. Your golden child. I looked directly at Nathan, who seemed to be dissociating from reality. Your heir, the real Richardson blood you're so proud of. He's your nephew, Ethan, not your son. Judge Patterson from Table 6 spoke into the stunned silence. This would certainly affect any inheritance disputes, fraud, potentially, certainly grounds for contesting any will modifications based on false premises. The Boston Globe reporter was practically vibrating with excitement. This would be front page tomorrow, and we all knew it. Ethan sank into his chair like a deflated balloon, staring at the son who wasn't his son, the wife who'd betrayed him with his own brother, the empire built on a lie. There's more, I said, pulling out additional documents from the envelope. For those questioning the validity, we have the full chain of custody documentation, notarized, witnessed, every legal requirement met. Michelle tried to stand, wobbling in her designer heels. "You can't do this. This is our private—" "Private?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You made it public when Ethan stood up 5 minutes ago to humiliate me in front of 500 witnesses. When you decided to destroy my mother's legacy publicly. When you called me not real family in front of Boston's entire business community." I held up another paper. "This is particularly interesting. Daniel Richardson's medical records from Mass General 2001. He was treated for a skiing injury in January, right around the time Nathan would have been conceived, the same week, Michelle, that you told everyone you were at a spa retreat in Vermont." "How did you—" Michelle started. "My mother knew," I said simply. "Caitlin knew everything. She documented everything. She protected me by keeping quiet while she was alive, but she made sure I'd have the truth when I needed it." Nathan finally found his voice. "Dad, tell them this is wrong. Tell them." But Ethan wasn't looking at Nathan. He was staring at a photo on his phone, probably one of Daniel, seeing the resemblance he'd been blind to for 24 years. "The cheekbones," Ethan whispered. "The eyes. God, he has Daniel's eyes. How did I not see it?" "Because you didn't want to." Elizabeth Richardson spoke from table 1, her voice carrying despite her age. "We all saw it. The family resemblance. But not to you, Ethan. To Daniel." The room erupted. 500 conversations started at once. Camera phones flashed. The wedding videographer panned across the crowd, capturing history. Senator Morgan was already on his phone, probably distancing himself from the Richardson political donations. 3 of Ethan's board members huddled in urgent conference. The Tanaka family was taking notes. But I wasn't done. There was one more truth to reveal, one more piece of my mother's carefully laid plan. "Mr. Tanaka," I called out. "You asked why I wasn't leading the Seaport project? Now you know. It was never about merit." Ethan tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. The commanding CEO who'd built an empire, who'd just tried to destroy me publicly, couldn't form a single word. Nathan broke the silence with desperate denial. "This is fake! Dad, tell them it's fake! She's lying!" But Ethan wasn't listening. He was staring at Michelle with the look of a man watching his entire world crumble. 24 years, he whispered. 24 years of raising my brother's son. "He's still your son," Michelle pleaded, mascara streaming down her cheeks. "You raised him. Biology doesn't matter." "Biology doesn't matter?" I repeated into the microphone. "That's interesting, Michelle. Weren't you just toasting with Ethan about how I'm not real family because I'm adopted? Weren't you the one who insisted blood is everything?" The irony wasn't lost on the crowd. Someone actually laughed, sharp and bitter. 3 board members from Richardson Holdings stood up and walked directly to Ethan. "We need an emergency meeting," Charles Worthington said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "This affects everything, the succession plan, the company structure, everything." "Mr. Richardson," Senator Morgan had approached the head table, his political smile nowhere to be seen. "I think it's best if we discuss our future relationship privately. This situation complicates things." Nathan grabbed his father's arm. "Dad, say something. Tell them I'm your son." But Ethan just shook his head slowly, the movement seeming to take enormous effort. "I need to leave," he mumbled, stumbling as he tried to stand. Mr. Tanaka approached me instead, bowing slightly. "Ms. Ophelia, your courage is impressive. Richardson Holdings has lost our confidence, but perhaps we could discuss working directly with your firm?" The power shift was visible, tangible. The king had fallen, and everyone was scrambling to align with the new reality. Ethan Richardson, who'd entered this room as Boston royalty, was leaving it as a broken man who'd been deceived by his own wife for over 2 decades. Elizabeth Richardson commanded attention without raising her voice. At 78, the former federal judge moved through the chaos with deliberate dignity, her cane tapping against the marble as she approached the microphone. "Enough," she said simply, and 500 people fell silent. I have something to say. She looked at Ethan with disappointment, at Michelle with disgust, at Nathan with pity, and finally at me with something approaching pride. I've known the truth about Nathan for years, she announced. Caitlin told me before she died. We kept quiet to protect the family name, to protect Curtis from retaliation. Gasps rippled through the room again. Ethan looked at his mother in betrayal. You knew? I knew my son Daniel's features when I saw them, Elizabeth continued. The Richardson chin, the eyes, they skipped you entirely, Ethan, and went straight to the boy you claimed as yours. She turned to me. Curtis is my granddaughter in every way that matters, not by blood, but by choice, by love, by the strength she's shown tonight that none of you, she gestured at Ethan, Michelle, and Nathan, have ever demonstrated. The matriarch pulled out her phone, typing quickly. I'm calling an emergency board meeting for Richardson Holdings. As the holder of 30% voting shares, I'm exercising my right to remove Ethan as CEO, effective immediately. Mother, you can't. I can and I will. Curtis receives her mother's 15% shares without contest. The trust fund transfers immediately. And Nathan? She looked at the young man who'd discovered he was living a lie. You're terminated from your position. Nepotism has no place in our company anymore. Grandma, please, Nathan started. I'm not your grandmother, Elizabeth said coldly. I'm your great-aunt, and you've acted without honor, without dignity, without earning anything you've been given. She turned back to me. Your mother would be proud. She protected you until you were strong enough to protect yourself. That time is now. The Queen had spoken. The kingdom had new rules. Marcus stood beside me, taking the microphone gently from my hands. My husband, because despite everything we'd said our vows earlier, looked out at the crowd with the confidence of a man who knew exactly who he'd married. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice was warm but firm. I married Curtis today, knowing every single thing about her past. I knew she was adopted. I knew she'd been treated as less than family. I knew about the DNA test, and I stood at that altar anyway, because I also knew this. I was marrying the strongest, most principled woman in Boston. He pulled me close and I could feel the tension leaving my shoulders. Those of you who want to leave, please do. But for everyone else, this is still our wedding. We're still celebrating, and we're going to dance. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mr. Tanaka started clapping, slowly, deliberately. Dr. Coleman joined him. Then Judge Patterson. Then Patricia from HR, who'd driven in from the office. One by one, people began to applaud. About 200 guests headed for the exits, the social climbers, the fair-weather friends, those who couldn't handle the scandal. But 300 stayed, the ones who mattered, the ones who valued courage over conformity. Marcus signaled to the DJ, who'd been frozen in shock for the past 20 minutes. The opening notes of Kelly Clarkson's Stronger filled the ballroom, perhaps a bit on the nose, but perfect for the moment. May I have this dance, Mrs. Thompson? Marcus asked, using my new married name. Not Richardson, never Richardson again. As we moved onto the dance floor, others joined us. Elizabeth Richardson, helped by Judge Patterson, the Tanaka family, Dr. Coleman, even some of Ethan's former board members who'd clearly chosen their side. Michelle fled with Nathan stumbling behind her. Ethan sat alone at the head table, watching his life's work dance away from him, one song at a time. The wedding photographer captured it all, the ruins of one family and the birth of another. By Monday morning, the Richardson scandal was everywhere. The Boston Globe ran it front page. Richardson dynasty crumbles at society wedding. DNA test reveals decades of deception. Business Insider picked it up by noon. Boston real estate mogul ousted after public paternity scandal. Stock plummets 30%. The security footage from the Four Seasons, someone had leaked it, went viral on social media. #Richardson. Wedding trended for 3 days. The moment I'd pulled out the envelope had been viewed 12 million times. Richardson Holdings held an emergency board meeting Monday at 2 p.m. The vote was swift and decisive. 8-3 for Ethan's immediate removal. Elizabeth Richardson was named interim CEO, with a mandate to restore confidence and stability. The board has lost faith in Mr. Richardson's judgment, the press release stated. Recent events have demonstrated a pattern of discrimination and poor leadership that endangers shareholder value. Nathan's VP position was eliminated Tuesday morning. The email went company-wide, a brief notice that the position had been restructured out of existence. He was given 2 hours to clean out his office. Security escorted him out. By Wednesday, 3 major contracts had pulled out of Richardson Holdings, but something unexpected happened. 5 new companies reached out to Ophelia Design directly, including Tanaka Corporation's entire Asia-Pacific portfolio. "We prefer to work with leaders who demonstrate integrity under pressure," Mr. Tanaka told Forbes in an exclusive interview. Ms. Thompson showed more courage in 10 minutes than most executives show in their entire careers. Michelle filed for divorce Thursday, citing irreconcilable differences. The prenup Ethan had insisted on would leave her with almost nothing. Ironic, considering how much she'd valued money over truth. By Friday, Harvard Business School had called. They wanted to develop my story into a case study on crisis leadership and ethical decision-making. The empire Ethan built on bloodlines had crumbled in less than a week. The legal resolutions came faster than anyone expected. Tuesday morning, $2 million appeared in my account. The full trust fund, transferred by Elizabeth personally to avoid any delays. "Your mother earned every penny of this," she said over coffee at my office. "Ethan's contestation is withdrawn. He wouldn't dare fight me now." The 15% shares in Richardson Holdings transferred Wednesday. At current market value, even with the 30% drop, they were worth $52.5 million. The dividend payments alone would generate $2 million annually. My lawyer, recommended by Marcus's firm, was thorough. "Everything's ironclad. The DNA evidence eliminates any grounds for contestation. If anything, you could sue for emotional distress and defamation." "I don't want his money," I said. "I just wanted what was mine." Ophelia Design's transformation was immediate. The Tanaka contract alone was worth $10 million. 3 other firms followed, explicitly citing my demonstrated integrity in their proposals. By month's end, we'd secured $30 million in new business. Nathan's situation was more complex. With Daniel long dead and no other heirs, Nathan had no claim to the Richardson estate. The money Ethan had spent on him, Harvard, the cars, the trust fund, that was considered gifts, unrecoverable. Michelle's divorce lawyer tried to argue for spousal support, but the prenup was specific. Infidelity voided everything. And while the affair with Daniel was 25 years old, fraud was fraud. Patricia from HR sent me Richardson Holdings' updated succession plan. My name was listed as a major shareholder with full voting rights. Elizabeth had added a note. "Your mother would be so proud." The financial security I'd fought for wasn't just about money. It was about freedom. Freedom to build my company without begging for scraps. Freedom to choose my relationships. Freedom to never again apologize for existing. The emails started flooding in Monday evening. Not press requests or business proposals. Personal messages from Richardson Holdings employees. "Thank you for standing up to them," wrote Janet from accounting. "Nathan humiliated me last month for a simple error. Seeing him face consequences gave me hope." 57 employees reached out in the first week. Each had a story about Nathan's arrogance, Michelle's condescension, or Ethan's favoritism. My public stand had given them permission to speak their own truths. 5 board members contacted me privately, suggesting collaboration on future projects. "Your presentation skills and design innovation were always superior," Charles Worthington admitted. "We were just too cowed by Ethan to say so." The Women's Business Association of Boston invited me to be their keynote speaker at the annual gala. "Your story exemplifies the courage required to succeed as a woman in male-dominated industries," their president wrote. Harvard Business School's request was more formal. They wanted to interview me for a case study on power dynamics and truth in family businesses. The professor noted, "Your strategic patience and documentation practices could teach MBA students invaluable lessons." 3 Richardson cousins I hadn't heard from in years reached out with apologies. "We knew how they treated you," cousin Amy admitted. "We should have stood up for you. We were cowards." But the most unexpected call came from Janet Wilson, Daniel Richardson's widow. "I knew about Michelle and Daniel," she said quietly. "I've known for years. When Nathan was born, the resemblance was obvious, but I had my own children to protect, my own reputation to maintain. I'm sorry I never spoke up." "We all make choices to survive," I told her. "You made a different choice," she replied. "You chose truth over comfort. That's rare." Every message, every confession, every apology proved the same thing. Silence enables abuse, but one voice of truth can inspire a chorus. 3 months later, Ethan requested a meeting. Not at Richardson Holdings. He wasn't welcome there anymore. Not at the estate. Michelle had gotten that in the divorce's early settlement. We met at a small cafe in Cambridge, neutral territory. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. The commanding presence was gone, replaced by something hollow. His Armani suit hung loose on his frame. "I'm in therapy," he started without preamble. "Twice a week. The therapist says I have control issues stemming from childhood abandonment. Apparently, losing my father young made me obsessed with legacy. With blood." I sipped my coffee, letting him talk. "I was wrong," he continued, the words seemingly painful to speak. "About everything. About you. About what makes a family. About what matters." "Yes," I agreed simply. "You were." He flinched but continued. "Your mother, Caitlin, she loved you more than I ever loved Nathan. Real love, not possession. I see that now." "She did. I want to apologize for the wedding, for the years before, for making you feel like you didn't belong." I set down my cup carefully. "I appreciate the apology, Ethan. And I forgive you, for my own peace, not for yours. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we're family now." "I understand. I'm willing to have contact once a month. Coffee like this. No business discussions, no family events. Not yet, maybe not ever. Those are my boundaries." He nodded, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "That's more than I deserve." "It is," I agreed. "But Mom, Caitlin, asked me in her letter to leave room for redemption. People can change," she wrote, "but only if they choose to." "I'm trying to choose differently," he said quietly. "Then keep trying. But do it for yourself, not for my forgiveness." We finished our coffee in silence. As I left, I felt lighter. Not because I'd forgiven him, but because I'd set terms for my own peace. Nathan's letter arrived 6 months after the wedding, handwritten on plain paper. No Richardson Holdings letterhead, no family crest. "Curtis, I don't expect you to read this, but my therapist says I need to write it anyway. I've been in intensive therapy since November. Turns out, finding out your entire identity is a lie tends to mess with your head. I was horrible to you. Not just at the wedding or the weeks before, but for years. I see now that I was desperately insecure, terrified that someone would discover I didn't deserve anything I had. Turns out I was right. I didn't deserve it. But that doesn't excuse how I treated you. You worked for everything while I was handed everything. You earned respect while I demanded it. You built your own success, while I took credit for yours. I was the imposter, not you. I'm working now. Real work. Loading trucks for a shipping company. My supervisor doesn't know who I used to be. I'm earning $18 an hour and learning what actual accomplishment feels like. It's hard. It's humbling. It's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm also in school. Community college, paying my own way. Business administration, starting from the beginning. Maybe one day I'll actually deserve a position somewhere, but that day isn't today. I don't want anything from you. Not forgiveness, not friendship, nothing. I just wanted you to know that your courage that night didn't just expose the truth. It might have saved me from becoming a complete monster. Nathan, P.S. I legally changed my last name to Wilson. It was my mother's maiden name before she became obsessed with being a Richardson. I wrote back once, briefly. Nathan, thank you for your letter. I wish you well on your journey to becoming whoever you're meant to be. We all deserve the chance to grow. Curtis. We never corresponded again, but I heard he graduated with honors 3 years later. Sometimes humiliation is the first step toward humility. 1 year after the wedding that changed everything, Ophelia Design occupied 3 floors of a downtown Boston high-rise. The reception area featured a portrait of my mother, Caitlin Ophelia Richardson, with her favorite quote beneath it, "Build your own empire, then choose who enters." We'd ended our first year with $50 million in revenue and 30 employees who shared in profit sharing. No nepotism, no favoritism. Every position earned, every promotion deserved. The Architectural Digest feature came out in September. They called our Tokyo hotel design revolutionary and our sustainable housing project the future of urban development. The article mentioned the Richardson scandal only briefly, focusing instead on how adversity had forged an architectural visionary. Mr. Tanaka flew in for our 1-year celebration. We took a chance on character over connections, he told the assembled team. It was the best decision Tanaka Corporation ever made. Elizabeth Richardson attended as our silent partner, 5% equity, no voting rights, her choice. I'm investing in what should have been supported from the beginning, she'd said when writing the check. Marcus's law firm occupied the floor above us, handling all our legal work. We'd lunch together daily, 2 entrepreneurs who'd bet on love and truth over comfort and lies. My office was simple but meaningful. The DNA test was framed on one wall, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that truth, however painful, sets you free. Mom's letter sat beside it, her words visible. Be stronger than I was. On my desk, 3 items. A photo from our wedding, the real celebration after the chaos. My MIT diploma, that I'd paid for myself. And a small card from my team that read, "Thank you for showing us that integrity isn't just a corporate buzzword." Richardson Holdings had recovered under Elizabeth's leadership, but Ophelia Design had soared. We'd built something real, something earned, something that no DNA test could ever take away. Mom was right. Building your own empire was the only way to truly choose who enters. Looking back now, I understand what my mother knew all along. Family isn't about blood. It's about choice. Every single day we choose who deserves our loyalty, our time, our truth. Documentation really does beat conversation. Those 3 filing cabinets of emails, recordings, and papers weren't paranoia. They were preparation. When someone shows you who they are in writing, believe them. Save it. You never know when truth will become your shield. Dignity can't be bought or stolen. Ethan tried to take mine at that wedding, in front of everyone who mattered in Boston society. But dignity isn't something someone else gives or takes. It's something you carry within yourself. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's necessary. Telling Ethan he could have 1 coffee a month wasn't punishment. It was self-preservation. You can forgive someone and still protect yourself from them. The truth might hurt, but lies destroy. Michelle's lie destroyed a 24-year marriage, Nathan's entire identity, and a business empire. My truth, however painful, at least allowed everyone to rebuild on solid ground. Success really is the best revenge. But peace is even better. Ophelia Design's success felt good, but the peace that came from living authentically felt better. No more apologizing for existing. No more shrinking to make others comfortable. No more pretending grateful for scraps. Forgiveness is for yourself, not them. I forgave Ethan not because he deserved it, but because carrying anger was exhausting. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or allowing him back into my life. It meant setting down a weight I was tired of carrying. Standing up might cost everything, but kneeling costs your soul. That night at my wedding, I risked $2 million, my inheritance, my reputation. But staying silent would have cost me something worth far more, my self-respect. My mother's final gift wasn't the money or the shares or even the DNA evidence. It was teaching me that when you build your own empire, you get to decide who enters, and more importantly, who doesn't. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced injustice from your own family, remember this: your worth isn't determined by their recognition. Subscribe if this story inspired you, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment boundaries if you believe in protecting your peace. And remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's simply living your truth. Until next time.